in thinking this week about long-term athlete development and what it means, and then reading some articles, especially a recent research paper published by Collins in 2014 about the rocky road of super champions, uh, it's become clear to me that one of the failings that we have in youth sports today is really the environment, and not so much the too much competition or too many games or the excuses or the uh, limitations that many people see, but instead the environment, especially the treatment of players. And so one of the key takeaways from the Collins article is that the athletes who become super champions, if you compare them to the almost and the normal champions, uh, they're more resilient. They are able to develop more adaptive and coping skills so that they do not allow disappointment or a failure or a mistake or an injury or some form of setback to get them off their path or off their road. But they stay motivated and they continue to work, and a lot of times the setback will fuel them. Obviously everybody's heard the story of Michael Jordan got cut from his varsity team when he was a sophomore, and that kind of fueled him. Draymond Green, the last couple of weeks has been talking about how he can recite, every single player who was picked ahead of him in the NBA draft, and how that fuels him. Damian Lillard talked about, not making the All-Star team this year, and how that kind of fueled him in the Portland's playoff run. So rather than these setbacks kind of ending their careers or becoming debilitating in any way, they became, kind of an inspiration or an ignition, to work harder, to prove the doubters, whatever cliche you want to use. But the cliches have some merit. And so one of the problems in youth sports now is that instead of allowing a player, to fall on his face and then get up and rebound and come back stronger, as soon as a player starts to fail or starts to have a mistake or starts to have some form of setback, a coach or a parent or someone steps in and kind of resists that or eliminates that potential mistake or potential failure and prevents the setback from happening. And so because we step in and essentially do the work for the players don't learn that adaptive response or don't learn the resiliency. So then when they go to a new coach or the new environment, or they move away from home, or whatever the circumstance is, when there's not that safety net there, they don't know how to react. And oftentimes that's where the failure becomes an end to one's career, or the setback becomes debilitating to the point where the player does not come back from it. And so to enable players as young adults and adults to have the resiliency to overcome these setbacks, we need to allow children the opportunity to fail, the opportunity to make mistakes, the opportunity to learn from small mistakes. When you're a child, the mistakes have less impact. If a young child falls down, they get right back and they start running. They don't know that they made a mistake. That's just what a child does. But when a parent or a coach or something makes a big deal out of the mistake, then it sends a message that is a mistake, that's something wrong, that's something to be avoided. And so we need to allow children and young athletes the opportunity in the room to have an environment where they can make mistakes, fail, have setbacks, and then bounce back, and give the support that's necessary to encourage them to bounce back from these setbacks, rather than stepping in and doing the work for the athlete or the parent or coach, trying to avoid the setbacks altogether. Because when that happens, the player doesn't develop those adaptive responses or the resiliency, and ultimately a setback becomes too large to ignore, and that's what kinds of ends a career. So allow for the failure, allow for an environment where the player can learn on his or her own and develop some resiliency and develop some adaptive responses so that they can handle tougher, bigger challenges in the future as they progress on their athletic journey.